What is up, YouTube? This is Elro281, and today I'm bringing you my first anime review, and so a little bit about my review a little bit about my review setup is I'm going to hopefully be doing this review with the setup of, talking about some stuff, and then if something's relevant in the show that I can find, I'll insert a clip and then come back to talking about it. So you get a little bit of an example of what I'm talking about. But I'll also be rating on a scale of 5. So the lowest the lowest score you can get on that scale would be a 1 out of 5, obviously. And that would be a very poor show. Needs lots of improvement, no redeeming factors, didn't enjoy it at all. Next would be a 2 out of 5, which would be a below average score, which would be a few redeeming factors, hard to watch but bearable. Then 3 out of 5 would be an average show, not quite enjoyable but not quite terrible either, just a decent show. You can watch through it with no problems. It's got some good things, got some bad things. 4 out of 5 would be a good show, and that would be lots of things that I liked, a very enjoyable show, easy to watch. And a 5 out of 5 would be a perfect score, and that would be, everything is awesome about it. It's got a really good dub, it's really easy to watch, story flows nicely. It would have to be a perfect show, and have to be a very enjoyable show and very accessible. I should also remind you that this is a review. These are opinions that I hold about the anime that I watch, and each person is allowed to have their own opinion. So if you disagree with this review, that is okay. You are allowed to disagree, and that's why it's called a review. So let's get right into this first review, and today we're going to be reviewing the show Cyber City. This is the overview of the whole show, not just one of the 3 OVAs. So I'll talk a little bit about each thing that I like and dislike, and I'll give you an overall score at the end. So, first thing is, this show is a cyberpunk police detective style show where you have 3 main characters. These are these 3. I don't remember all of their names. I only remember Goggles' names just because he wears goggles and that's a ridiculous name. And they're 3 criminals that are put in the space prison for doing terrible crimes such as murder, theft, and other things such as that. They are given the chance to redeem their crimes and lower their sentence by working for the police force and doing very hard police work. Their terms range from like 600 years plus or something like that, and each time they do a task for the police force, it lowers by a small amount, say a couple years or so. And basically that's the whole premise of the show. Each OVA in the show is set up as one character per OVA, where it focuses on specifically one character's story, a little bit of their backstory, a little bit of a case for them. So that's a really cool setup. I like how they did that. And each case is, there's only one case per episode, and each one is very unique. And so let's get into the pros of the show first, the things that I liked about it. So, the first thing is I really, really enjoyed the setting for this show. It's a very, very cool and believable futuristic setting. A lot of the buildings and the technology could be feasible, and they do their best to explain the technology of certain things, such as the buildings and the architecture, to some of the weapons and, stuff like that. So it's a very believable setting. It's got a very cool and dark setting as well. It's got a mixture between like space and, you know, like normal, like Earth surface stuff. So that's really cool. The next thing I would say I would like is that it has a good character development. You learn the backstory about each character individually per OVA. So depending on which character you think that you might like, you can just watch that OVA specifically, because you can really watch them out of order because there's no successive thing to them. So that's kind of interesting that I noticed about that show. The character backstory for each one is very unique. Some of them go into more in-depth than others, such as I think Goggles has a very in-depth story as compared to the other two. So I really kind of like Goggles' backstory. The next thing I liked about the show is that it had very, very good animation for the time. This anime was made in the early 90s, I believe 1990 to 1991. And the animation is really, really good. The cells are painted and drawn really well. Each individual frame is very, very pretty. This is my personal opinion of artwork, of course. It may not be for you. It's a very old art style, but I really enjoy the art style. The animations are quite fluid for a older show like this. Normally they don't use as many frames, and they kind of like skip out, especially in OVAs, whereas this one, I didn't notice too many scenes that had reused animation, and it was a very fluid show for the most part. The last thing that I really liked is it has a unique plot per episode, so it's kind of very episodic. You can watch each episode, you can watch all of them out of order, you can watch one. If you didn't like it, you don't have to watch anymore. And there's no real overarching story to all of this other than they're trying to lower their sentences to get out of prison. Each episode has a very unique plotline, and some of this may be spoilers, and I'll put a spoiler tag before the video. But there's a scene about vampires. There's an episode about vampires, and you can watch the case about vampires, and it explains where the vampires came from and whatnot. There's a case about a cyborg machine that is being developed by the military and goes kind of like crazy and haywire, which is kind of interesting. And there's the last one, I believe, is about a building or like a building architect that was killed during the building of this giant skyscraper, and you learn a little bit about that case as well. So they're all very unique cases that really don't have anything to do with each other, but they're really cool and really well done. Now we'll get on to the things that I didn't like about this show. The first thing I didn't like about this show is that it was very short. Obviously, it's a 3 OVA series. Each OVA totals about 45 minutes, maybe 50. I didn't really time it, so that's my guess. That's what it felt like. So it's a very short show, and I really think that this could have benefited from being a longer show. As if this was a normal, like even a 12-episode anime, I think you could have expanded, maybe even had an overarching plot to it that would have been really, really cool. And there was just a lot of potential there that really kind of, was hindered by the fact that it was only 3 OVAs long. So that was one real downer to it. I kind of wish there was more to it, but that's all you get. And the next thing I didn't like is that there was a lot of excessive language in this show. So if you do not like cursing, then you probably shouldn't watch this show, at least the English dub. The English dub has a lot of cursing in it. I'll probably put an example of that up right now.
I don't think anything could be worse than being in here. If you want to give me a chance, you can count me in.
Yeah, me too. Any chance of getting my freedom has got to be better than no fucking chance. All right, you two, it's a deal. Now what about you then, Son Goku? What's your choice, Mr. Hotshot? You want a second chance, then pick this up.
Okay, I don't want to buck the trend. I accept your most generous goddamn offer. Like I've got any fucking choice.
But, yeah, within the first probably, I would say, like 10 minutes of the show, they say the F word, like, probably, I don't know, more than a dozen times. It's bordering, like, worse than South Park amount of times they say the F word, which is kind of ridiculous. So that may be a hindrance for some people. I really thought it was very unnecessary. I mean, it's not that I don't mind vulgar language, it's just that this was to the point that it was extremely excessive and kind of hindered the dialogue at points. The next thing I didn't like, which is, for some people, I didn't mind it, but I'm putting it in this section for people that do not appreciate this, it is the gore. There is a lot of gore in this anime. Well, it's not the goriest anime I've ever seen, but it is a pretty gory anime. There are intestines and such that fly everywhere. There's a lot of blood. You can see people getting, blown to smithereens and whatnot, so...
What a monster!
There's a lot of gore in it, so if that's not your thing or you get queasy easily, I wouldn't recommend watching this show, as there are some scenes with that in it. The last thing that I would say I didn't like about this show is the fact that it has very, very cheesy dialogue. Its dialogue is very early 90s, I should say. There's a lot of one-liners in it, and some of them you're just like, really? That was really unnecessary. You could have just moved the plot along, but there's a lot of scenes that they're not bad, but the one-liners kind of make you cringe a little bit.
Hey, Benton, don't crap your pants if you see a vampire out there.
Get lost. You wouldn't recognize a goddamn vampire if one jumped up and bit you on the end of your fucking dick. So just get off my back.
The dialogue is pretty cheesy. Overall dialogue, though, it's not as bad as it could be, but it could definitely use some improvement in the dialogue section. Now we'll move on to the overall rating and my personal feelings on the show, because I try to keep my review as unbiased as possible. I'll go into an open mind, and I will tell you a little bit how much I enjoyed the show after. So, the rating. I give this show a 3 out of 5. That is a pretty average rating, and most of my shows, hopefully, will be rated to 3 out of 5, as it will be the average, hence why it's called that. But, yeah, so this was a pretty decent show. I enjoyed parts of it. I really wish it was longer for the most part. That was the biggest gripe that I had. I kind of wanted more from the show, and I sat down and watched it, and I was like, this had so much potential, and I kind of wanted to know more about certain characters, and there's just a lot of questions that you're left with, like the whole police organization, like how many people are in this program that they're in, and just various other questions that just never get answered from such a short show. So that's all I have for you guys. I know that this is going to be probably an iffy review, as this is my first review that I've ever done. So leave me tips on what you liked about this review, what you didn't like about this review, and I'm always happy to accept constructive criticism, not destructive criticism, obviously. But yeah, I'm happy to get some help for this, so let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you guys are interested in checking out this anime. I would love to discuss it with you. And thank you guys for watching. That's all I have for you. And we'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Now, Mr. Saionji, I am arresting you for a whole host of shit I can't be bothered to list. You have the right to remain silent and so on.
Very funny, but I don't think you'll arrest me. You must understand I am no longer bound by your mortal laws.